So, you know those moments when you sit down to what is supposed to be a quick business happy hour and a quick 1 hour turns into a 6 hour drinking session where you're totally working on all business, but your boyfriend is messaging you, asking you if you're okay. That might have been the first time I met Lex, our guest on the podcast today. She is not someone I only admire as a friend and as a businesswoman, and I am so excited for today's conversation, but she is someone who models what it is to support women in business and in life through many ventures in many ways in her life. So we're going to get started. But today we are totally going there. So we will be talking about money. We will be talking about identity shifting, vesting, pleasure, heartbreak, expansion, and non-traditional relationship structures.
All right.
So with that,
Let's do it.
welcome to the Bizz Bitch podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And also, that story is totally 100% true. Was it 6 hours?
I think it was because I think we met at like 3 or 4-ish, and I don't think I got home that night until like close to 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So it was a late one.
Yeah, it was a late one.
The sun was up when we started.
Oh, yeah. 100% it was up. Such a good view.
Yeah.
Shout out to Monarch. But yeah, I guess it was 6 hours, which led to beautiful things.
It did.
Okay, well, that is a great way to kind of intro me into your life, I guess. But obviously, my name is Lex Lewis. That day, I think we were meeting to really just like talk business, talk community building. We had met at another friend's community building event.
Shout out to our friend involved.
Yes.
Up in North County.
Yeah, right, like-minded OC. So we had met there, and I think we were going there just to kind of like see where we could partner and that type of thing. And I feel like that's really kind of how I would intro myself, is that I'm at the intersection of entrepreneurship. So I am a business owner. I own a tech company that does ERP solution integration type of things for large government contracts. And that sounds super boring, and I always kind of downplay it, but really it keeps the lights on business-wise for me to do all of these other things. And it has me leverage one of my greatest assets, which is my husband, by the way. Maximize every asset, lady. And so that is what keeps the lights on. But I'm also a early stage startup investor in only female-founded companies. So obviously that also means I advise. And then I build the tech company that I own also builds tech for women doing great things. And then I also have like a very large real estate arm that also supports women in all of those things that they want to launch and do, and own several short-term rentals, land, that type of thing. So that's on the business side. But I would say, like, more than anything, I'm just a good vibe.
Yeah, she is. She's a real good time. She's a good time.
I'm just a good vibe.
My Scorpio energy is like, I need more of this. How do I get more?
Yeah.
I would share her with her 5 children and her husband. I'm not sure, but I try.
Like, I just have a lot of energy, right? So like for me, a lot of people hear me say this all the time. So if that is the case, forgive me, but I am like multi-passions, multi-paychecks is a big belief of mine. But also like multi-passions, I feel like has fueled my life in a way that does bleed into like all those other things that you mentioned. So talking about untraditional marriages and different community building events that we're at where you can connect with people. Like, I really think souls made all the time in different ways. And that takes a lot of energy to put out there. But I really do feel like that's authentically who I am at my core. And the more women that we can connect on a personal level, that is the way that you can then spark these multi-passionate conversations that lead most times to multi-passionate endeavors that then can produce money. So that's kind of, I guess, me in a nutshell. I have 4 biological, 1 bonus baby, and they range from 24 to 4. So life in a little much sometimes.
Wild. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it.
And, well, I think honestly, it is like having a business partner and a life partner is very different than most people, and it makes it easier for me personally. And building wealth, like I am an example of where wealth and happiness and joy can truly intersect, and then I don't feel guilty to spend time doing what I love and also spend money on things to support that, like a nanny, like, help and that type of thing. So
the money gives you the power to enjoy.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Into my first question. Does money always been easy for you? Have you always been good with it? Were you brought up that way? Like, what is
Yeah.
kind of like that backstory of money?
Yeah, no. So, no, I was not brought up like that. I actually just came from an Akashic readings today. We won't get too much into that, but
Because I have so many questions. It's going to have to be a
yeah,
whole
I know
nother
it would have to be
episode.
a whole other thing. But we did talk about my dad a little bit, and honestly, like my dad is such everybody that knows me knows he's like cornerstone of my life, such a homie, biggest champion, all the things, but was raised with very, very, very little and did not know while he gave us the gifts of like freedom and belief in self and all of this like exploration of adventure, like did not come from any source of like how to manage that. So he actually wasn't great with it. And neither was my mom, even being a white woman that came from like a middle class, like upper middle class
I mean,
family,
my mom
you know.
wasn't either.
But I would say, yeah, there's things that financially I didn't discover or really like get into. I would say until I was approaching, well, I would say as I climbed the corporate ladder, then that
Yeah.
came
Okay.
with more knowledge
Hmm.
of money. But money was never like an early motivator. My motivator has always been a life of service. And that's how I still approach money today.
Hmm.
Uh, and how I get it to multiply is through service and is through sound strategic investment, which is women, by the
Hmm.
way, come to our table,
Yeah.
but also through, knowing that giving of yourself and giving of yourself to the world does come back to you, right? So I have always believed that. So I've always had a healthy relationship with money in that I never thought that like I had to hold on to it
Gotcha.
because my dad never held on. Like they spent fucking money, like both of them. They spent money. They did not manage credit cards. Amazing, all of these things that you don't realize are happening when you're a kid. But
No.
then
Yeah.
as you step into adulthood and like climb a corporate ladder, you have
Hmm.
um these different like models for you. And then you start discovering like, oh my God, we were living off of fucking credit card and
Yeah.
like stuff like that. Like it was never dire, but
No, of
it
course.
definitely was not good.
And they were doing their best.
They
I
were
always
doing
say they were
100%.
doing 100% their
100%.
best. Yeah.
But I don't have scarcity mindset in the way that they
Yeah.
did. And I don't have scarcity mindset in the way that I see other female
Yes.
entrepreneurs that I have.
Specifically women.
Yeah,
There's a
women,
lot.
because we are risk aware by, you know, intuitively and by nature, we are risk aware. We don't have to be risk averse. So I'm not risk averse at all,
Mm.
but I am risk aware. I think some women take that risk awareness to another level, partly because of where they came from, like where you are born and where you're born and when is very influential of how you're going to feel about money unless you do things to change that over
Yeah.
time. And that's part of why I'm launching a nonprofit that is,
Oh, we're going to get into that part. Don't
around
worry.
financial
Yeah.
literacy, but all of those things. So no, it has not always been easy. My ex-husband was not good with it
Okay.
either. And he didn't come from large means either. So it was largely when I got good at it, it was because I wanted things that required money. So I wanted a house to live in. I wanted to be, I wanted to have those things ahead of the curve. And I knew that I could because I always believe that I can do
Hmm.
any of the things that I want. So I had to learn those things and manage. And then also just want to like, I would, from a very young, being a young mom, I wanted to give that to my children
Ability.
specifically,
Yeah.
not even just give them more money and give them stability, but give them an understanding that like I was learning and therefore what I learned would be passed on to them.
Yeah.
Learning wise, and that I wanted them to have a different picture of like, oh no, we're not just living off of credit cards.
Hard.
We're
Or
going
like
to live within
we're
our
doing it the right
means.
way with
Yeah.
the travel points
Exactly.
and we're paying them
We're
off.
going to live within our means,
Yeah.
but we're going to still have fun, and we're also going to still like work towards the things that we want and not have a horrible relationship with money. Once that like was ingrained in me, then it was like I knew that I was going to reach this
Point.
Yeah, I always saw that.
So I think I'm always curious, and I know others are always curious. Like, you say your first investment, but like, what in the first time you had money to invest, whether it was real estate or where did that first amount of money come from? Because I think there's so many journeys with
Yeah,
it, right? And
yeah.
so, first off, like, where did that money actually come from? And I always say there's no shame in this. And this is part of the stories I want to tell because I think it comes from lots of different
Yeah,
places. And
100%.
we choose what to do with it and how to do it. Because a lot of
That's
people
the
get
key.
the exact same
Mhm.
story and don't know what to do with it.
Yes, that is the key. And full no bullshit honesty, it came from a car accident. So I
Ooh,
got in a gnarly.
I
I
have just
also,
learned
yeah,
something from you.
I had also been, obviously say, well, two things I would say it came from. I buck every, system and social stigma out there, but my oldest children were raised in low income housing.
Mhm,
So I leveraged, that's part of how I learn about money is I leveraged low income housing in San Diego. It's called bridge housing. It still exists
mhm.
at this point. And there is a group of housing where you had to qualify low income wise or like income wise. And it was according to like your income. You fell into a different
Yeah,
bracket, right? So you could grow with it, but then like you'd
yeah,
age
you
out of
age
it
out of
if
it
you,
and you
yeah.
get kinda kicked out of
So
it.
I knew I would get kicked out of it, but my ex-husband was a minor league baseball player that did not come with like a very large signing
Mhm.
bonus, right?
Which you think they would,
Yeah, but they
but
did
it is
not. You
not
go in the
true.
19th round and that shit ain't happening. But we did a lot of other things. Like we built education into his contract. So like every time he went to school, he got paid like, I don't know, back then it was like 5 grand a
That's
semester.
smart.
But like that
Those are really
was
smart moves,
as
yeah.
long as he went to school,
Mhm,
and it was every semester he was home, he went to school, it was another 5 grand. Plus we had state,
mhm.
you had Pell Grant and all that. So back then in 2000, that was,
Yeah, that's extra.
your 10 grand a semester
Yeah.
was all you needed to afford rent back
Mhm,
then. Right. Anyways, but I just got really smart about how to maximize our family amount of income that we can make because we were so young. We had kids when we were 24 and 21.
mhm.
So we lived, so two ways. We lived in low income housing, so paid a very small amount for rent and was able to save a lot of that money. And then eventually, obviously, I climbed corporate and we were going to get out of that anyway. So it wasn't, I would say it was only like 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years around there. And then towards the end of that, like, so we had saved. And as we were starting the process of like, okay, let's see if we can actually buy a house. And back then it was still like doable in
Yeah,
like a very real way
in Southern
in
California.
Southern California. Yes. And it was still doable even for us because I had started making more money, but I got in a gnarly car accident. I got hit by a semi truck
Oh,
and
I'm
on the freeway.
so happy you were okay.
Yes, me too. Hit by a semi. I was the first car to get hit in like a 7 car pileup on the 15. Shut
Wow.
down the 15 for like hours one day. Semi just lost its brakes and I got
Mhm.
hit. And I had bought a brand new Honda Accord, my very first brand new
Oh,
car ever.
no.
Bought a brand new Honda Accord the week before that.
Oh,
And luckily, it had the new anti crash technology. So the airbag never deployed because I was locked back. So
oh,
it
yeah.
never knew. And that's how you break your neck. So the woman in front of me actually she had an older Honda Accord and the airbag
Ye
deployed and she broke her neck. Yeah.
Oh,
So because it was a brand new car, that full amount of that car that got
yeah.
totaled and then so I was able to get another brand new car. It's sturdier. I got Honda, another Honda because I was very financially practical, SUV. And because I had to go to like therapy and like all of that kind of stuff, I got a settlement and it was small because again, I was like, I'm not coming after this guy.
Ye
It was a long period of time. I was going to get something from it. I didn't, clean house. Yeah. I got like, it paid for all my therapy and stuff for like a year. I had to go to therapy. Like I'm talking physical therapy.
Mhm.
Also went to emotional because it was very traumatizing. I think I got the check that I received after the fees that the lawyer takes from it was $12,000. And that was like $1,700 more than what we needed for our down payment on our house. So we like
Oh,
barely met it.
yeah.
And then like that other 17 like went to like different things that we had to do to it initially. And that's what got so that was my first like investment
Investment,
in a
personal
property,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
it was for us to live in. But that is what then propelled that moving forward because that leads to, and that's why I'm a big proponent of women getting into real
Yeah.
estate and real estate investing as either initial part or like a fractional type of investment, fractional meaning like partnered with other
Mhm,
people, that it's a great way to build wealth and it's a great way to learn about money and be exposed to the owning like property owning population
mhm.
because you learn a lot from that diverse group, which is what happened. And then I was able to just because we bought a house that was affordable and I climbed corporate, I was able to continue to build that wealth. And then really it wasn't until post divorce that I made my first investment.
Okay.
And that wasn't until 2013, 2012, I guess. Yeah.
So, kind of fast forwarding a little bit from that first investment to more the angel investing
Mhm.
side,
Mhm.
because how many years would you say you're in the, not just women, but just in general on the angel investing side?
10 years.
10
Oh, yeah.
years.
So it was like, right. So real estate investment was the first, couple or the first piece of that. And then I wrote my first check into a male because that's how I grew my wealth was through
Mhm.
white, rich
Sure.
males.
It's a great place to invest
How,
because other
which,
people invest
yeah,
in them and then you can make money and go do
you
what you
have,
want with it.
you have an investment community that you trust. That was through my husband. So like, I don't mix words about like how that came to be and
Sure.
like how you get comfortable and what you learn and who you follow and that type of stuff.
So, you remember that first angel investment?
Yeah.
Was it successful? Did a
Yes
not
and no. That is one that is currently still, the jury is still out on.
okay.
But initially, so there's all different types of investments,
Mhm.
right? And so this one was an actual like yearly IR like return on investment that you're just dividend payout
Yeah.
essentially is the way that you would think about it. Um, and with also the opportunity that if that company ever like exited, like got bought, right? Then you would have had this dividend yearly payout that you were getting, but you were also potentially then, if the company was bought
Yeah.
for whatever X, you were also going to get paid out there. So that's a really smart
Mhm.
way. And on from a real estate investment side of things, when you can have those like hotel deals, land deal, different stuff, big commercial real estate
Mhm.
type of investment. That's how a lot of the deals will be structured with like a waterfall that you're getting paid out anywhere from 12 to 17% might be the range that you're getting on the waterfall, but that's a yearly
Yeah.
return that you're getting. And then you can decide, do you roll that back in or do you roll it into something else? Or do so that is one way to do it. That was my first
That
one.
was your first one.
And so yes and no. So it was successful for many years of
Okay.
giving dividend payouts that actually paid for all of my daughter's college tuition.
Oh, I love that.
Um, and
That's
and
incredible.
that's specifically what I used that
Mhm.
for. And then from there, like then I had, obviously I just would take all that money and then invest in
Mhm.
something else.
So, that one sounds like it is still very much in the in the
Uh-huh.
floaters
Yeah,
and
I would
then
say it's out there, but it's a potential graveyard, and
yeah. Yeah,
that's a
that's
real
a real thing,
thing.
and I don't think people
Yeah,
understand that as I've
100%.
been very baby stepping into understanding this industry because
Yeah,
the hope is I wanna be there one
yeah.
day, that I think people automatically think they're just big wins, and I think it's so different
Oh,
than real
fuck no.
estate in that way of the predictability of it.
Yeah, no.
Do you have some things in these last 10 years that has been a big win?
Yeah, I mean, well, 2, I would say, again, male-founded company, had a large exit that ended up and it was just, like, perfect timing of
Frequency was
skill
there?
set, timing,
Mhm,
the surge in that particular gaming industry.
mhm.
That was 5, 6 years ago. I'd have to, like, look at exact dates, but within the past 5 years. And then real estate wise, again, a smaller kind of like LP type of deal that was going to take longer. And my husband and I and a business partner structured it, brought investors in. So this one was led in by us.
Mhm,
And just again, like timing and market at the time, like post COVID
mhm.
or like into still COVID timeline, but like what people were looking for and that type of thing. So there was a bit of timing. There's always a bit of luck.
Yeah,
There always is. And those that say there's not, it's strategic and crunching numbers and whatever is bullshit. And it's not following any sort of like intuitive universe fed investing model that, or not model, but like frequency that all investors have. And so it's not all about crunching numbers. It is a lot of like intuitive kind of seeing, what you trust and having it be led by like people like me, my husband, people
yeah.
that we know is a very different thing. So that had a very, very large exit. And that's where I would say I received the majority of the funds that I've invested in the last 5 years
Okay.
have come from that.
You said last night at an event we were at that you don't just invest in companies, you invest in people. What would you say that that's every investor's thought, or do you think that's something you've personally decided to add as your like
Yeah.
investing philosophy?
No, I would say if any investor told you, angel, even PE, private equity and VCs, like, yes, the larger you get, the further away you get, the more it's made by like board
Sure.
executives. So like the larger the VC, the larger the PE, maybe this fades in percentage a little bit, but it is a percentage of every investor's model,
You gotta
every
like the person,
investor's
right? You gotta
decision.
vibe with them.
Well, it's not even just vibing. It's I say betting on the jockey. The old, obviously phrasing is betting on the horse,
Yeah.
but it's really like if that jockey has all of those qualities that they're going to get anything across the finish line, it might not return X,
Mhm.
50X. It might not be a unicorn. It might be like a 2X return. It
Yeah.
might be you just get your money back. It might be that spins off into something bigger and better in a different direction. It might be that connects you with something else. But if you're betting on that jockey to get it across the finish line and that they have the skill set and the personality and the frequency and the vibe and that type of thing, then you are ahead of the curve in your quantum, like your belief that something is actually going to come to fruition because you would bet on that person
Yeah.
every time,
Yeah.
right? So like I would bet on you,
Why,
Jazmin
thank you.
Cornejo, in multiple different types of situations to get something across the finish line. Now that might take you, Jazmin, 5 years
Yeah.
to do that, but I know it's going to come to fruition. So I'm going to bet on you. So it's a percentage of everybody's. I don't know one angel investor that doesn't talk about the founder or the team or the like the support structure that they have behind it, that
Mhm.
was like, maybe you're like, CEO's not like a super strong,
Yeah.
sure, maybe like you wouldn't be their friend, or
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, this person wouldn't like wow me, but what they set up
Yeah.
to support what is needed and the community that they have set up to support that, or the technology or
Sure.
whatever, the
Yeah.
engineering crew, whatever it is, the infrastructure they've helped set up, and that's been all them. You're like, that person's
Yeah.
gonna win, even though you wouldn't like sit and listen to them on a stage. So there's all different kinds of things that
But there's all different kinds of founders
yeah,
and businesses. Like, I think
100%.
there's
Yeah.
the brands and there's the non-brands and then
Yeah,
there's just the
totally. But
businesses
I
and
mean, if you think about it, again, we can talk about this all day and we'll end it. But I would say that if you think about life decisions,
Mhm.
like, you don't pick a partner that you wouldn't be willing to bet on.
Yeah.
You don't pick a childcare provider that
Mhm.
you wouldn't be willing to bet on. You don't pick a school for your children to go to that you don't think meets criteria. So we use this in like
Yeah.
everyday stuff,
It's a
right?
sense of
So
intuition in a way as well.
100,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And I would say that some of the most successful like investors out there in the community, like in the world and the investor
Mhm.
space, talk about using intuition and betting on founders a lot. Now, it doesn't mean all of those are going to pan out, because there's a lot that still ends up in the graveyard for whatever reason, but usually that experience leads to something else,
Sure.
or leads to
Well,
like
and I think it's like
like a
being an
phoenix
entrepreneur in
rising.
general. We're betting on ourselves and our ideas to some capacity
Yeah.
in the beginning before we can actually prove that
Yeah.
it's a product that's going to go to sell.
Yeah, well, and as an entrepreneur, not every entrepreneur is in the startup world, right? Not everyone starts out even with that in mind, to
Mhm.
sell a company or to
Yeah.
grow like a big brand or whatever. And the flip side is true. You set out to build a big brand or sell a company, and then along that path, something else arises that is still a money maker, but it's just not in the same way that you thought. And that doesn't mean it's not a win. It's just a different path.
I always
Yeah.
have to remind myself to not get too tied to or married to my ideas or my passions in certain products or
Yeah.
parts of my business, because I have to let it evolve to what it might be. And I feel like it's probably the same in the investing world, because you can't get too married to the idea, because if it doesn't work out, it would
Yeah,
probably.
you have to, as an investor, you definitely want to leave room for pivot, and like you ask those questions, right?
Yeah.
Like, if this part of the market changes, you ask all those things. But I'm early stage from a angel investing. Now, again, that is just a portion of my portfolio.
Yeah.
That's not like, I do not want anybody to think like this is my job. Like, I just sit around and invest all day. Like,
I
no.
promise she does lots more
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
unless you're in PE or you're at a VC, or own a family office, or that's not what you're doing all day. Real estate is a other big part. Tech is another thing. But what I would say is that from from an investing standpoint, what I would leave you with is that for women to get into this
Mhm.
space, you do have to meet a certain threshold as an angel, right? So it's $1 million in net worth, not including your house,
Mhm.
or making 200. Actually, I think it has raised to 250 potentially as a single person, 350 as, and you'd have to check those numbers. It might still be 200 and 300 personal income. So
Okay.
like you have to meet one of those
Yeah.
criteria to angel invest. That is, and it's,
Yeah.
and to be honest, it's self accreditation. But if you ever got audited
Sure.
and were caught, then like, yeah,
Yeah.
you would lose that investment, and all of those things come with that. You usually are just checking boxes to say that you meet that threshold. So this does come later in life,
Mhm.
right? For most people. But that's why I talk about maximize every asset, because for me, while I was making that in corporate,
Mhm.
right, before in corporate education, well, between that and real estate, I was making that amount of money as a single person. As a partnership in combining assets, right, then that amplified my ability to meet the other checkbox, which is just the $1 million net worth. And or $2 million as a couple. And so you again through that. So it's all pieces of
Yeah.
puzzles, right? And you're never doing it like completely on your own. You're always leaning on, information that is out there in the world, other groups that you're a part of, that you trust and
Yeah.
know that have been in the game longer. And also like your partnership with your partner needs to support that. Now, that doesn't mean you need to start out that way,
Sure.
but it should be part of the conversation for sure. And that goes into like everything. I meet women all the time that are like, I want 4 kids and I want this and I want that. And I'm like, I didn't hear one thing about like what you
Yeah.
want for your life, because that is going to,
Yeah.
that is going to shape whether you really want those 4 kids or you really want, because as those things happen, then you're like, okay, what can I actually afford and what can I, so that goes back to that like financial literacy foundation, which is why I talk about you have to meet, you have to learn about like accredited investor and real estate, and start in real estate investing that does not require accredited investors that can help you grow wealth to get to that point where you
Points.
can
Yeah.
be accredited. And that's really only, I mean, that's a small part of every angel's portfolio. They're making lots of money off of real estate, market,
Sure.
PE,
Yeah.
all of the stuff. It's very wide. Crypto, all of the things. You're like super diversified always.
Yeah.
So it's not just angel investing by any means.
You mentioned the family part of it and the husband part of it as like a huge part of the journey that you're on in the support system that allows you to do what you're doing. But also, it's funny. I always think, and this is my podcast, and it's, I'm going to say what I want to.
Get it, girl.
Super mommy mommies drive me nuts and I love them to death and there's a place for them. But you're not one of those, at least in
Don't
this.
say you love them to death. No
No,
one,
they're
no one
very,
loves
you
them. They
know,
don't even love themselves to death.
it's just like
So
ones that can't talk about anything else. And I get it when you
mhm,
first have the baby or you first, it's the same. When you
totally.
first get a
Yeah,
boyfriend, that's
everything's
one
a
thing. But
totally.
like when their whole life revolves around that, it's really hard for me to come to line with them and just relate with them. But I thought that was, I think, one of the most fascinating pieces of first meeting you. And I think everyone, when you stand up at an event and you go, oh, by the way, I have 5 kids, and you do all these other things, that you don't come to the table as this like mommy, mommy. I've heard you go a whole night without even mentioning your children, which I think is a magical thing. And I think I tend to surround myself with the moms that do that more than the other. More, and it's probably because I don't have children, but I feel like you guys all relate to each other when you're in my world because you have multi dimensions of who you are and pour
Yeah.
into yourself. And also have built this life of allowing yourself to raise kids the way you want to with support. Do you think your involvement of how you are a mom before the money is different than your involvement in how you are a mom now because your kids are different ages, or also just different partnerships and different husbands and the way they show up in your life?
All of the above. So I would
Because
say
I think it's a
yes.
really important
Yeah.
question to ask yourself when you're going into these things that a lot of women don't. And even not wanting
Yeah.
kids is, how's this partner going to support the life that I
Yeah.
want and the.
Yeah, 100%. I would say that, well, obviously I mentioned it, but my kids range from 24 to 4, right? So I raise kids in 2 different generations, literally 2
Very,
different
yes,
generations,
yes.
right?
That's why I asked,
So
because
yeah,
you've kinda had an involvement of
yes.
yourself in that time.
Yeah. So yes, I would say absolutely I'm a different mom. But where I was the most different, and my kids, if they were here, would say the same thing, is that like I'm much calmer and not as disciplinarian as I was with them. And
Are your
also
older kids jealous of your younger kids? They're like,
uh
"Why are you so
I
relaxed with
don't
them?"
I
You were like,
know sometimes they like like really it comes into play when Walker, because Walker, my 6-year-old, is flexing hard right now.
Yeah,
That
she's
is
the
the
boss
age,
lady of the house.
by the way, every
Mhm,
mom out there,
mhm.
that is the age where they start to flex, and it's good, especially for young girls and all of the things. But
Get that little voice.
she flexes a little too hard. I still run a household that is full of respect.
Yeah, of course.
So that is, where the flexing like then needs to come into balance. And I would say the first generation of kids, I flex too hard on them. So I would say
Ah,
I was over disciplinarian,
okay.
over like, I mean, they hear Walker talk back now. They will all like the other day it happened and all three of them were in the house, all three of the older ones. And remember, Deanna didn't come on the scene until she was 8.
Yeah.
But she also
I don't
talks
even think
about
I
like,
realized it was that early.
so it's been a whole thing. Even, Deanna came in at 8 and she even came in knowing that there was a healthy fear of me
Yeah.
in that I made the decision, I ran the house kind
Mhm.
of thing. And they all, the other day when Walker talked back, they all three, their heads all turned to me at the same time. Like it was like, are you going to let
Yeah,
that
you gonna
happen?
let that
And I just was
6-year-old
like
boss you around?
standing at the sink and I just looked at them and I was like, isn't this fucking crazy? Like that she thinks
This little boss of this house?
she has this like this like reassurance that she can just talk like that,
Yeah.
So that is one way that and obviously that changed over time, them coming in
Sure.
teenage years. We were always very close, but yes, I was going to raise my kids very differently than how I was raised in terms of lots of things, right? The point is that it was different in that way. Also from a money perspective, my older kids and now remember, Diana was raised in a different house. So she does have a scarcity mindset that she has to work through because it was very scarce. But she learned abundance through being in our life. So that's why I do encourage people, like, you don't have to be a mom,
Yeah.
by womb.
Yeah.
You can be a mom by community and
Absolutely.
by choice.
By auntie.
Yeah, by
I was
auntie,
yeah,
by
that's
choice, but like really deeply
yeah.
can happen. And like I mean those like I gave birth to her in my
Mhm.
medicine journey.
Yeah.
Like there was, all this stuff. So there's real like soul contract
Yeah.
connection there. But with my older kids and her, they definitely have a different idea of like what the value of it. Like
Mm.
this costs money. I am going to not like ask for that
Yeah.
or not. And they like all of them have an IRA. They all put money in an IRA. They all an IRA.
Yeah.
I put the girls through a financial course. Nicole Chessa, shout out to her, that guided them through that, because in order for them to be executors of our trust, they had to go through this program taught by somebody other than me
Ah.
that taught
So they
them
respect it
about
and they learn
all
it.
of
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
things so that they respect it, learn it, and can ask questions without me there
Yeah.
feeling like, whatever. So they all like do some sort of like investing or managing IRAs or, whatever. Would like I fucking didn't do
Same.
that,
No.
Yeah.
And I do think it's the responsibility of our parents, but at the same time, I do truly wish that education got themselves more involved in that process
Yeah.
for those with different broken families. Because I think there's some things I was learning in high school that was really unnecessary, but
Yeah.
like didn't learn enough about those
Yeah. Well, and
and
that's
setting yourself up for success
hence
or
the financial
yeah,
literacy nonprofit,
yeah,
because that is really like if we can structure something that is similar to what like had them go through with Nicole, and like it would be less intense because just time permitting. But you have those things, it's like just like a short crash course in like all of these things, even like how to manage, how to maximize credit card
hmm
points and which ones to choose, and that you shouldn't ever use a debit card,
yeah,
and like, you should use an ACH account to pay for certain things so you don't have to pay extra percentage points
sure,
on things.
yeah,
But as long as you pay a credit card off every month,
yeah. The
that
amount,
is you live off of that borrowed credit for that period of time. That does not mean you're living off of credit forever, like our parents might have done. It's for that period of time that you pay off every month, and then you're getting so many perks
yeah.
from that thing, right? So even just that little thing
Was
is
it
something I didn't learn until
Was it you? I feel like it might have been you or someone who said that rich people or people with money are the cheapest people at the airport. because
Mhm.
they have flown on points. They go to a
100%.
lounge.
Cheapest travelers
Yeah, they
ever.
go to a lounge.
But we say cheapest
Yeah.
in the way, really cost effective, but
Yeah, it's cost
yeah,
effective, but like they're not spending at
not
the
spending
restaurants and the
money.
bars because they're in the
100%.
lounge. They've got the points, which is how they got their flight. They're not
Yeah.
paying for luggage. They've upgraded to first class on points.
100%.
And they're the ones flying the most but spending the least at the airports. And
100%.
it's those that don't know how to
that's
leverage.
but yes, I told Devaney the other or yesterday was like I have to meet my flight amount to hit A-list for Southwest, and I figured out that I was like going to be 4 flights short, or 6 flights short. So I legitimately in December have 6
Really random
flights.
trips.
Like I went up to San Francisco on Tuesday, flew up in the morning, flew back in the afternoon, hiked all day in the redwoods.
We could have timed that better. I leave tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for San Francisco.
There you go. I mean, but I just spent a day up there. I didn't miss seeing my kids, and it was $39 each way, and it counts towards my flight. And people are like, well, then you spent money and you didn't get anything. Well, the A-list for next year gets me free checked baggage, priority boarding. I get all the perks, purchasing the less ticket. So when you did the math, I was like, it pays for itself.
Plus, you also get a life enriching experience.
Of course.
Which is
honestly, if you also crunch the numbers, it just financially makes sense to plan ahead. And that's what people don't understand is that you might be spending $1 today, but you're investing in the future. And that is money mindset. That's how money mindset shifts when you get to a level where you can actually you're building generational wealth and you're building wealth that is for a future you want to live. You are often going to be doing something where you're like, I'm spending 30, so $80 that I don't need to spend right now. It's $80. If you really need to figure that out, don't buy Starbucks once a week for 4 weeks.
Or if you're an entrepreneur, go sell a product or a digital client or book a paid call. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, we have control of those levels.
And that's the financial literacy thing too, is that like budgeting is both, which is very different for women because we are creatives and we are hustlers and we are magic makers, and those are whatever.
Sell a cute purse on
that from the beginning of time, this was like our role in the world, to be creative and to be in community and to leverage that community. We just shifted to living in a patriarchal setup because that's what the world did, but we don't have to do that. So that's the thing, is that like you can, from a financial literacy, you can either cut something out, and if that's comfortable and makes sense and it's not like heartbreaking, then that's one way, or you can earn more. And that's, that is all budgeting though. Like people think of budgeting as deducting and like fitting within this like certain, threshold. But it's not. You can just earn more. Also get
I think that's the power of entrepreneurship. I think it's something I remind myself of daily, is if I want something, rather than being like, oh, I have to budget or I have to control spending here. I'm like, all right, who do I have to go close? What do I have to go do to get that thing I want to, which is, I think, where we don't get capped on income as entrepreneurs, as long as we can keep pushing forward.
100%.
I'm going to switch us gears and go back to that happy hour and something you dropped on me so casually during that happy hour. And let me just preface, I barely have time to juggle my one boyfriend, and you're over here at times managing multiple and a husband. How do you hold that emotionally and energetically, and also give a little bit of preview into your non-traditional marriage?
So, this came up in my Akashic reading today, my Akashic Records reading today too, and that like I come to the world with like visionary energy. I work towards the life that I like envision as a visionary, right? So if I see that what I saw as a child of how relationship was not working at home in lots of ways. Again, great parents, not exactly great relationships that they have, right? So if you're raised like that, you can do one of two things. You can, have that trauma live with you and like wreck things for you later, or you can envision a different way. And even as a young person, I did not feel intuitively in the center of me drawn to monogamy in a way that was like something I needed. Right. And so I always kind of like knew that, and like knew that I thought of things differently, and also I didn't ever want to have freedom. Like those are my big things. Like freedom and courage are like my two big words that I resonate with and feelings, values that I resonate with. So
Personal values.
yeah, so those are two of my very big ones at the forefront of how I live my life. So I knew that. However, I also got caught in, I was still raised in traditional
Sure.
United States patriarchy.
We all are. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
absolutely. It's the same
it
reason why
turns
I thought I
out,
wanted to be a mom and get
yeah,
married and then was like,
exactly.
hold on.
And culturally, you and I are both Latinos. So,
Yeah.
like, you see that all around
I was
you.
meant to have 10 kids
Yeah,
in my family
exactly.
line.
We are breeders. Me,
Yeah.
each of my sisters and myself have 4
Yeah.
biological children. Yeah, it also fell on that. So there was still, and like life is a journey, right? So there was that what I knew just didn't like really make sense to me and like what I wanted. I had the courage to live a life of freedom
Mhm.
and a different life. I knew that it would also take time to build. Um, and I also was so caught up in that like cultural, type of thing. So I got married the first time being like, okay, this person is, it makes me laugh and is like, just kind of where I came from and that type of thing. Eventually we'll be able to evolve into that because, like he's so
Sure.
easygoing. I was visionary, like all that would like evolve into that. And that wasn't going to go that way. We also had like the church's influence
Mm.
because there was a stint of time where I was in the dogmatic like faith of
Mhm.
Christianity. And so that was an influence. And so you have like all the things that like over your journey are going to like influence you. So that was a period of time when I was married to him where I was like, oh, it can evolve into this. You get caught in the having kids and the grind and all that. And it kind of like takes a back burner. But then I still was like in me
Yeah.
knew that that is not how I wanted to be. Also knew that that wasn't the person that I was meant to have like a life partnership
Yeah.
with, which it was very painful and it was super
Sure.
hard, but I courageously made that decision for my life and for his life is better for it now too. And so then I knew the second time around I was going to do it differently.
Yeah.
And so Phil and I had these conversations early on. He didn't know if he want like same all of the things.
Yeah.
We
Sure.
wanted to get married, have kids. In the beginning, that evolved to where he really wanted to have kids and wanted to be married purely because my family would not have. It's such a big family. He didn't feel like he would be in
Yeah.
the family unless he got married. And I was like, that's fine as long as we know that this is not a tradition. This is
Yeah.
going to be a traditional
We're going to set some different
marriage
rules.
and have it be open. And because when you remove infidelity and you remove financial issues, you remove two of the three top things that people get divorced over. Now, I am not saying by any means that this should be what everybody shifts to.
No.
'Cause the
No. So
society, the
society.
construct was
Yeah.
not built like that. The majority of women
I mean, that's how
are,
I feel about being child free. I'm like, I don't want to see a world where we're all child free
yeah,
either because it wouldn't make sense. Like, we
100%.
wouldn't
Yeah.
continue to grow.
Yeah. Same thing. I
Just a space for all of us allowed to
yeah.
do what feels right to
Right,
us.
100%. But I do think that what all people should explore, as they approach partnership, is that you personally needing to be with somebody monogamously to bring you worth and security is a you problem,
Yeah.
not a relationship
Yeah.
problem, not a society problem that society has to like manage for you. It is created, that feeling of needing that is partly created by the construct of monogamy and patriarchy and all of those things. But, and everything's in balance. Like that construct, that construct is what built a great nation. But like I'm not delusional over like the central family
Yeah.
unit is what built the United States of America.
But
Like
I
it.
also think a lot of them were doing it and not talking about it.
Oh, 100. I mean, some of the greatest
I know.
presidents
I
of
was like,
all
I think it's
time,
actually been happening a long time and no one's been
every
talking about
greatest
it.
president of
Yeah.
all time had multiple mistresses.
Yeah.
That's not actually like ethical
Yeah.
non-monogamy,
Yeah.
right? Like that hurts people.
Yeah.
And so for me, but it's mostly when I run into like women always have a ton of questions about it, like just like you did that day. And you come from a different like relationship journey also, but like so they always have tons of questions, but it almost always ends with I can never do that.
Yeah.
How do you just don't get jealous? And it's always around the jealousy. And that's what I would like, that's my biggest calling to women in general is like, hey, and I always say, like, I'm not coming for your husband.
Or your girlfriend.
Yeah, or your girlfriend. I mean, because yes, I do go both ways. Like, it's really so kind of, again, the same intersection of like how I live life and what I think about business is do what lights you up. first. Like if you can work towards what lights you up, always, it is just it's so much more a joyful experience. Now that's not always going to be the case. You're not always going to be able to do
Sure.
what lights you up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you are going to have to sell insurance
Yeah.
that doesn't light you up, and you create all of these things around that lights you up, that thing pays for. That is
Yeah.
absolutely a thing. Same thing in a relationship. Like your husband or your wife or your partner, whatever, is not always going to light you up. But what are the things about the partnership
Mm.
that person allows for lighting up and allows for that growth? And one of those main things should be your personal worth to
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if your own partner, you feel jealous, you know that like, oh, you couldn't do that because you would feel jealous. There's so much that goes around
Yeah.
deconstructing that is about you.
Yeah.
And that's if we could all like, I had that records reading today, and I'm like, and I had come from a network chiropractic appointment, which is a different form of chiropractic.
Oh, my mom
Also,
loves that.
yeah,
My
just
mom's a big network chiropractor.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like network chiropractic is very different. Look it up if you don't know what it is. Just is a whole thing that has changed my life. But I'm like, came and talked to her. Obviously, in the woo world, everybody knows about it, but that is such a small percentage of the world. I'm like, if everybody knew about network chiropractic
Yeah.
and how to regulate your nervous system, or lots of different things, right? But how to regulate your nervous system, the world would be a different place. We would have less war, we would have less debt, and all that. And that sounds whatever. So like idealistic, but it's not. It's true. So it's the same thing. If the world had less jealousy and less coveting and
Yeah.
less, those things, and really it was about like visionary, like allowing your own vision of your life to be the thing that led you, that would lead to more wealth. That would lead to more, like all of those things. That's a true thing.
Yeah.
And that starts with like how you feel about
Yeah.
yourself, right?
I
So
think the jealousy thing is my biggest thing I've had to work on for years in relationships. And it's something I admire over the open relationship. The jealousy and the communication, I think, are
yeah.
two things that I think women who are like, I could never do that, if they thought deeper about the levels of communication and that you could get rid of that jealousy feeling. Dan, my boyfriend, is not jealous at all. That man doesn't have a jealous bone in that little damn body. And it drives me insane. I'm like, hello, look at me. Do you want to see this message from this man?
Yeah,
Like,
but the
hello.
fact that we are like
Yeah.
trained
Yeah.
as young women to like instigate that,
Yeah.
or like want them to show that
Yeah.
to us, when really he shows you love
No,
in
yes,
so
exactly.
many different ways
Yeah.
that I know Dan
Yeah.
shows you love and shows up for you.
Yeah.
Or just quietly is there for
Yeah.
you, like
Yeah.
those types of things.
But I think it's a beautiful part of the non-traditional marriage structures that I don't think
Yeah.
people look into. And I am thankful in the way that Dan was in an open marriage prior to me dating. And I think it came with a lot
For
of
many years.
for 18 years. Yeah. And not all the time, obviously. I think
Yeah.
it goes on and off. And I think that's what
100%.
people think is it's like it's always on. And I'm like, no, it's
No,
just like your
no,
own
you're not.
marriage
No.
and your own relationship. But what it gave us is a level of communication, because we started talking about that in the beginning, to where we can explore what other options could look like later down the road or whenever we want to. But what it gave up me is I have had a lot of jealousy and heartbreak around ex-girlfriends, and I've been cheated on. And to be at the friendship level that I am with his ex-wife, who lives in our building, we dog share with, we share a wall with this woman, it's a really fascinating thing. And so many women are amazed, like, I could never do that. How do you do that? I mean, I was at her Christmas party 2 weeks ago, dressed up. We go every year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we're not like best friends and friends, but there's a level of respect we have for each other. And I think she's able to respect me because she has seen him with another woman. This isn't a first.
Yeah.
And so, yes, he's never loved someone like he loves me, but in all, her true of hearts is seeing that man happy and loved in his next phase of life is what truly makes her happy, because she has a respect and love for him.
Because you've
And
removed those other things.
yeah,
And they had a lifetime of removing those other
Yes.
things, right? So like it's the same thing with Phil and I. Obviously it's different because we're also business partners, but like we both don't have jealous tendencies, but it doesn't mean we're perfect by any means. So there are a few
Sure.
relationships that he does have with women that I think are unhealthy in the way that those women have treated him or
Yeah.
reciprocated
And
to
that's more
him.
being protective.
Yes,
Yeah.
but he still
Yeah.
he still has those relations and it still shows up for them. He's just the greatest guy on the
He
face
is. He
of the
truly
planet.
is.
Like he
Yeah.
is, yeah,
He's the nicest guy in the world.
he's
He's a
the
great coffee chat kind of
he's the
guy.
nicest guy on the planet,
Him
and
and Dan can just go
yeah.
in Nice Guys
Yeah, they're
Academy.
just they can nice guy off. But he also is like the thing with Phil, and we also talked about this today, is that he has a tremendous amount of courage
Mm.
about him that I find so attractive. So there's always those things that like are
Mm.
the most attractive. And like I'm a bit of a sapiophile where like intelligence and like depth and that type of thing. But courage is a big thing because it is one of my things,
Yeah.
right? And we talked to, and I had never thought about it that way, but
I
he
like that. The courage.
courageously steps forward in all of these unknown territories like
Mhm.
fatherhood and open marriage and being a business partner with me and being in the, I mean, he is an investor in the
Yeah.
female founders
Yeah.
also.
Absolutely. He shows up at those big women's
All of
investing
those things, and that
conferences.
can be overwhelming.
He
Like,
workshops. I have sat in a room with
oh,
50 women with him and got paired up with him,
yeah,
and
he
he engaged.
engages
He's
and
in.
he's in it.
It's
He's in
super
it.
fun.
And imagine the flip side, right? Like I have had to move in a world like that where
Mhm.
it's you walk in a room full of men. But now that when it's my choice, I don't choose to, it can be uncomfortable, it can be
Yeah.
overwhelming.
It
It's just
can.
like all this, and he chooses to go there all
Yeah.
of the time and with courage, all the so my point is that like with the jealousy thing, you can choose courage. You can choose to start to believe in a different construct for yourself or a different mentality for yourself that opens up doors in other ways.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean you go to an open marriage, even just having the conversation about what that
Sure.
would look like.
Using it as your dirty talk,
Yeah,
even. I mean,
yes,
yes, like
100%.
that
That's
is
such a
like, yeah,
kink. And that
yeah,
is part of it, right? Like, you and I have talked about this, but
yes,
that's like my kink, right?
yeah,
Is that like that is what I'm into. And I'm not, I don't play into the stigma around that. Like I just speak openly
yeah,
about like we all have those things.
sure.
And if you can
And if you haven't
courageously,
found yours yet,
yeah,
go do
find
some work.
yours.
Do
Find
some
your
work
king,
and keep finding her and keep
yeah,
working on her.
all of the above. But I do think that like that, since to tie it back to business also, like it takes courage to do what we do. And it
It
takes
is.
courage to not go back to corporate. It takes courage
Mm-hmm.
to have a child when you're unsure of whether
Yeah.
you want to, but your partner does, and you know that you will make it work. And it takes courage to choose not to have children.
Yeah.
It takes courage. We make courageous decisions
Mhm.
all of the time, but it takes courage to do what we want to do, to believe in ourselves enough that we are our lifeline, like
Yeah.
we are our livelihood. That takes courage. So if you are held back by things like jealousy or like not knowing what your kink is or like being afraid of abandonment
Mhm.
that could lead to, right? Those are things for you to tackle
Yeah.
to free up space for more courage.
Yeah.
And if you have more courage in life, you will be more successful because some things will fall flat on their face, and that's fine, but you'll have the courage to be able to still do the next thing
Yeah.
that could be the big hit. And all of this again, like can sound so like cliche and fluff, but I literally am the living embodiment
Yeah.
of that, And I think yesterday, like we talked different people talked a little bit in another workshop that Jazmin co-led yesterday, Evolution Room.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about that with different, things coming up, but I think that, when we talk about like other women that are wealthy and happy or are successful and happy
Mhm.
or plug in whatever
Yeah.
word you want for that, you don't recognize how you might be that person for somebody else in your own like small leveled way. Like it might be a small level here or a bigger one here to somebody else. Me, like I can name people, right, that are my example of wealth and happiness.
Yes.
I can name them, and I can name ones that are not. And I also know that I am an example of that to other people.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
is part of my
You were
like,
that example to
yeah,
me.
thanks.
So I'm going to close with this. I often get judged in the fact of the way I show up in my brand, or my brand says bitch, or
Mhm.
that I dress a little bit sexier. I don't wear
Mhm.
blazers. Neither do you. We wear short skirts. We wear heels. Like, yeah, we put our curves on. We put our, jewelry on. My brand photos are a little bit sexier. You, for the most part, like obviously, if the setting's right, which most time are very comfortable talking about your open marriage. We're both really open no
Yeah.
matter what the setting is, even professionally, and don't think that that should come in the way of us building business, wealth, being respected.
Yeah.
What is a message to women in the community or listening to this podcast that might feel the need to censor themselves more to stay palatable to get that next level? And it's a lot of the time, I feel like, coming from family upbringing, it's coming from corporate trauma, right? Corporate is like,
Mhm.
you can't say that. You have to
Mhm.
dress this way. You have to show up this way.
Mhm.
What is your message to other women, and to be able to push past that and know that you can
I
meet
mean,
someone at a business meeting and 2 hours later tell them about your open marriage and still
yeah.
be respected?
It's a good question. I honestly would say that it takes, from a practical standpoint, I would say if you're struggling with anything where you're like, I feel like I need to make myself more palatable, but I don't want to. That's
Mhm,
internal conflict, right? So for me, I would say like practically do a values kind of
mhm,
assessment, right? Of like yourself and what are the things you value the most? And then how can you set up, whether that's your image or your brand or whatever, to support those things. And it might be that you do value speaking in rooms with men. And
mhm.
so if that is what you value and they value you looking more like them and you're okay with that, then that's okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's fine.
same, yeah,
Um,
I would agree.
but don't do it because you think, don't buy into the limiting belief that you have to stand up in front of a room full of men looking like them.
Mhm,
So don't just like, don't, carte blanche buy into that. Like, if that's your value, fine. If it's not your value and your value is what we just talked about, right? Like you defined what your
mhm,
value is, like biz bitch, and going and moving forward with that. We had a conversation about that,
yeah,
you and I, right? You put time and effort into like, what do I want to align with,
yeah,
and what do I want to inspire, and what do I want? That was a values assessment,
it was
right?
at
Like,
the yeah,
you 100% did that. So I
and I
would
have to
say
fully lean into it because I get questioned about it, I get doubted about it, and I do
you
you have to be
unabashedly, yeah.
full in on
It's
whatever
the
it
same
is.
thing with investing only in female founders. I
Yeah,
get all of the time like, "Oh, that's nice. That's good work. That seems like rewarding.
that's cute.
That's great to give back." Or like, "Oh, really? So men don't make money?" Or like, "You really think that?" You know? So I get that all the time too. And I unabashedly have to be like, "No, you want to come and sit down and I'll bring up my laptop right here and show you the statistics
Mhm,
on why we are actually
yeah,
sound investment." And I don't ever, like, apologize for it, and I don't get worried about it, and I'm courageous about that. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't build wealth off of men, and that doesn't mean that
sure,
men shouldn't be at our
yeah,
table or that we shouldn't go to theirs
I agree,
sometimes. But they
100%
need
both.
to be brought to ours
Yeah,
more often, and the only way that you can do that is to lean in what I truly believe statistically and performatively, just in what I know, right? But I would say practically do that values alignment or values assessment to align. And then I would also say that that internal conflict comes from places that are, you
mhm,
know, come from your childhood, come from, trauma, come from places that you're stuck at. So like, don't think you're stuck with them. And if you want to move on from dressing like, in a suit like a corporate male every day, and you want to move on from that, you have
lean
to
into
do
that
that
feminine
internal,
energy.
yeah. You have to do some internal work and then call that in and work with people that have done that and surround yourself with it and be a part of that community and that type of thing so that you can learn how to do that, because
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to like flip the
yeah,
switch, right? Like immediately. So I would say that. And then also, the end of the day, I mean, this comes with like age too. But the earlier you can do this when you are a young woman, and when I say not giving two fucks, it's really not about, I'm not saying you don't care about what other, you have to when you're selling a product or you're building a brand. The how people operate in the market does
yeah,
matter,
yeah,
right? Like, so you can't say I don't give two fucks about like whatever, but it's more about how you personally want to courageously live a life. You have to define that first, and then that helps you to unabashedly lean into the decision that you finally make.
Yeah. Well, Lex, thank you so, so much for
Yeah.
today. You are definitely a walking permission slip of what it means to truly live authentically you and build a life of wealth, but also of happiness. And, a little bit of feminine energy, sexiness in there as well, and break all those rules, which is
Hell yeah.
something
Hell
I
yeah.
do admire. Before we jump off, give us a little bit about what is coming next year in your world and where to find you. Because I know you're not a
Yeah.
traditional Instagram world.
Yeah.
So it would be more like a LinkedIn world and a company what's
Yeah.
following. And we'll keep this updated. And to be honest, we'll probably have you back once like the program is actually
Yeah.
built out. But just a little bit teaser on what's coming in that.
So yes, you are correct. I'm just Lex Mom on Instagram. So, but I will start talking about it on there. So the financial literacy nonprofit is next year's kind of like main focus for me because I'm at that point where that's where I can give energy to it. And it is just it's financial building sound financial foundations for a younger demographic of women from a woman's perspective because it is a little bit different in all the
Yeah.
things that I talked about. So that is 2026 is called Here We Rise, the we standing for women empowered. And but it's open, obviously the resources and everything will be open to anybody
Yeah.
seeking financial literacy and doing it in a fun
Yeah.
way.
I'm
And
super
the
excited.
three like main things are that it's your own personal health and wellness, your financial health and wellness, and your community health and
Mhm.
wellness. So those are the three things that I believe contribute to building wealth. And so there's workshops and programs that are specifically focused on those. So that is coming in 2026. But also I would say fifth quarter consulting that again, we're not on Instagram for that either, any of that stuff. But fifth quarter consulting, you can fifthquarter.com, you can just reach out to me specifically. And really what I do want to lean into in 2026 is that creativity, leaning into creativity where women are prepared or they're ready to move to that next level where they want to make money in their sleep, but they're like, I have this idea.
Yeah.
It's going to take this technology, but they don't know tech at all.
Mhm.
And we can help guide that process. And we don't need more business, but what we do need more of in the world is women that are ready to level up to
Yeah.
another thing and are gonna take that step and have somebody that can guide them in that process. And we are starting to work on building our own like retreat space that will be multiverse because that is a part of what I do with my spaces, my short-term rentals that are in San Diego. Also, that's where Lex Mom 13 comes into play because like DM me there so that if you want to launch, if you want to do any sort of, promotional type event and you don't want to pay, you don't have to pay like the preferred vendor
Yeah.
stuff, right? That's where you can use my spaces. In 2026, we will start to lay the groundwork for building a retreat space that is multi-use. So events, weddings, camps for kids, and then retreat space for high-powered women.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I have myself been able to host different events at your beautiful properties. And I'm so thankful. And women and beside the Biz Bitch community have been able to as well. And that is a gift you have given us. And so, so sweet of you because it's allowed
Yeah.
us to take our dreams to the next level. So
100%. That's all that
thank you
matters.
so much for today.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being authentic with us. And those of you listening, please rate, review, comment, subscribe, and come back for another episode. Bye, bitches.